Hello. Hello.
Hey guys, we'll get started in a minute.
Hey guys.
If you're speaking, you're on mute on the show.
No, I haven't started yet, but I'll go ahead and get started right now. Cool. So we're gonna finish our tic-tac-toe game today. But I'll start out with if anyone has any questions about the code from last time. So just a reminder how to open it up. We just do file, open folder, or open with the ... and then click tic-tac-toe React, which is the folder or whatever folder it is that you created. And then we open that up and now we have our code. And we want to look at app.js. That's the most important one, and then app.css. Cool. And then if you haven't installed the JavaScript Babel plugin, you'll want this one too, which will make the code look a little nicer. So do we have any questions about the existing code?
Yes, could you go over that JSON.parse or JSON.stringify code over there? And what is the meaning of JSON there?
Yeah. So JSON is it's a JavaScript object notation. It basically allows us to create objects and different types of things using strings, convert them back to objects that JavaScript can read, and arrays also. So it's basically here it basically says like they're basically universal data structures, and JSON allows us to write them as a string and convert them to an object and make it interchangeable. So what JSON.parse does is it parses an object and converts it to or parses a string and converts it to an object. And JSON.stringify converts the array to a string. So you can see that here. JSON parse converts a string to an array, and JSON stringify converts the array to a string. So what this allows us to do is basically create a clone of the array, because we want to create a brand new version of the array. We don't want to edit the same array, because React doesn't allow us to do that. Because if we use the same array, then it actually won't realize that it changed and it won't update the page. So let me open this up again. But so if you're on your desktop, then you can just do or go to cd tic-tac-toe React, and then npm run start. We'll open it up in your browser. So for the page to know that you updated it, and so every time I click, it should update the page, right? But it won't know that it's updated unless we create a clone of the array. So that's the overall goal that we wanted to achieve, was create a clone of the array. And to do that, this is one way to do it, is where you can use JSON.parse and JSON.stringify, which really just converts it to a string and then converts it back to an array. So really, you're not doing anything except creating a new version of this array. The reason you can't do this with Python.
So where's the initial string that it's converting?
So there is no string. So if you see here, JSON, so board is an array. We can see that here. It's an array because it has these brackets at the end. It's an array of all these. And JSON.stringify converts the array to a string. So this by itself, so let me write this out a little better. So string board equals, so now we convert the board to a string, right? And then clone board is what you convert the string to an array. So you don't start out with a string, you start out with an array, and then you convert it once and then convert it back. To open the file, what you have to do is do file, open ... or open folder, and then find the file on your operating system or the folder of your React app, and then open it up. Yeah, so that's a good question. Cloned. So why can't we do this? Clone board equals board, right? The reason you can't do this is because JavaScript will say, if you say clone board is equal to board, then clone board is actually the same object as board. But we wanted to create a new object. So we wanted to create a clone of the array as a new array. So we wanted to create a new array, and and to do this, we can't just say equals because that will just set it to be the same array and it'll reference the same board. Yeah, you want to copy board. That's exactly right. Let me comment that above here. Cool. No, you don't have to actually code or follow along, code along with me. You can just follow along and then I'll post the code after class. Cool.
Is it possible if you could probably just do a brief overview of this again, like the functions?
Yeah. So
Thanks.
this is our overall function in React, the function app. This is what comes in the React boilerplate. If you guys remember, when we did create React app, it automatically started with this file with some other stuff in the middle. But it starts out with the basic function, and this is what renders our page. So whatever we return at the end of this function is going to be what's on our page. So like I showed last class, if I just remove this, it's going to remove the entire contents of the page. And even though like we still have all this code, this is just helper functions and variables. But what's actually shown on the page is whatever is in between this return statement. So that's what return does. The class name is the only difference in React when you're writing the HTML. Class name instead of class, that's because class is a keyword in JavaScript. As you guys probably learned in Java and maybe Python also, is that you can use the class keyword to define a class, and you can do the same thing in Python. We don't need to do that for our web page, but that's why we can't use it in here because this is a JavaScript file. And that basically allows us to define some CSS, and so we actually don't need this. We don't have any CSS defined for app, but we use it for board, and that's what allows us to use the CSS right here. And same thing with Square. So an important thing in React is the concept of state. So we use this use state variable right here, and you can see how it's used. You can create a variable. You can create a function to set this variable. So I'll write that here. It's a function, and this is a variable, and this is basically any value. So you can create a variable. You automatically get the function to set that variable whenever you want, and you can set the default value for that variable. So in this case, for our board, we want the default state of the board to be empty. So every item in the array is empty. And the board, as you can see right here, has nothing on it. We don't want the tic-tac-toe game to start with random letters on the board because that would ruin the whole point of the game, right? So that's why it's empty. And we have an array of 9 values. So that's how we're storing our board. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 squares. And then you have your turn and set turn. So so turn just keeps track of whose turn it is. Is it X or O? So as we know in the rules of tic-tac-toe, X always starts. So that's why we have the default value of X here. And that means the first time we click the board, an X will show up because that's whose turn it is. So going down here, so current turn is that'll show up on the screen right here. Sorry. And then turn will be whoever's turn it is. It references this variable. So a cool thing you can do in Sublime Text is if you double click on a variable, it'll highlight everywhere that you're using it. So we can see that it matches the turn up here, and that means it'll show whatever that variable is set to. In this case, it's X to start. And then the next thing we'll have to do is actually display our board. So we can do board.map. And map is a JavaScript native function for arrays. So basically what it does is it'll allow you to iterate through the entire array in a for loop, basically similar to how you would do in Python or Java. And when you iterate through it, it'll give you the item in the array. So that's what the value of the square is right here. So this empty string to start with is the value, and then index is the square, which index in the array it is. So if you guys don't know, you start an array has an index of 0 to start, and then 1, 2, 3, all the way to 8, because we only have 9, and you start at 0. So you have the square and the index. So now class name, yeah, and then we put the square in inside this div to show that that's what we want to display. So whatever goes in between here is displayed on the board. And then we have an onClick function. So onClick is self-explanatory. It says what happens when we click the square, right? So the onClick function will call handle click, and then it'll pass in the index that of the square, right? So if we click the first one, it'll pass in 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So wherever I click, it'll know which square was clicked, basically. So now we go here in the handle click function. So this is how you define a function. You have to basically takes a parameter. So you start out by defining it like any other variable, and then you use the arrow to say that it's a function, where this is the argument, and this is the contents of the function, whatever's inside these braces.
So where have we defined index in this?
So index is defined right here. It comes from the map function. Like I said, so whatever the map function, as long as it's iterating over an array, it'll give you the value of the item in your array as well as the index. So for this one, it'll give me an empty string, and it'll say index 0. For this one, it'll give me an empty string, and it'll say index 5, right? So that way we know which square is clicked at all times. So as soon as we pass this in here, so this is how you call a function. I think you guys learned that in the Python and Java classes too, where you can call a function with an argument, right? So if I call handle click with an index of whatever it is, 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 8, now handle click can take this as an argument. So that's why we can use the index here, and it can do whatever it wants with it. So now we know that the index is, we know which square it is. So that way now, once we have our clone board, we can say that index in our array, so the 5th index, for example, is equal to the turn. So turn is X, right? So now we know index equals X, or this item in the array equals X, and then now we can set our board to that. So now we can update our board variable here, and so this update the board variable, because that's what set board does with the new board, and then clone board does what it does is set the index in the board array to the current turn. And then, so now we have that, and then the last thing we want to do is set the turn to the opposite player. So if X is playing right now, then we set it to O, and then if O is playing, then we set it to X. So set turn to next player.
So if I understood
so
correctly, so basically the clone board is basically saying that we will take the original string of string board and we will convert it into an array, and then it'll set the board to that array, and then if it is equal to the turn, then that turn, which is X in this case, will basically take the place of the index.
Close. So I think these are almost two separate things. So here you're saying we'll set the index to the current turn. That's right. And then the next thing we'll do is switch the turn. So this like switches the turn to the next player. So it's kind of like first we'll put the item on the board. So whoever's turn it is, it's X. We will set that item to X. Then the next thing we'll do is say, okay, O, you're next. So set the turn to O because X just went. And then now the next time they click, then we'll come back here and turn will be O.
Ah, I see. And also, could you post maybe the GitHub link so we can also see this code?
Yeah, I posted it in the tiny URL already.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so do we have to define the code and the functions, right? So we have to define them here. So by anything that comes before an equal sign is defined as a variable. So before an equal sign. So this is defined as a function or a variable, right? So this is board. This is just how use state works. Use state will take in a variable, and it'll also give you the function to set that variable. So that's how we define that function, and then we can use it wherever we want, and it's defined in our code. Cool. So the last thing we want to do for our game, so we can see it's working. Every time we click, we switch the turn, right? And now it's O. So next time I click, it's O. And then every time I click it, it goes to the next player. And then we can see we can win the game, but we don't tell the user that it's over and they can keep playing, right? So the last thing we want to do is check for a winner and then tell them that the game is over. So here we're going to want to add winning logic, as I made a to-do for. So that's what our next thing to do is. So here what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to call a function and check whether there's a winner or not, right? So we'll say if check winner. So it'll call that function because we have the parentheses here. That means we're calling the function. Then alert winner is whoever's turn it is, right? So since we set the turn here, I'm going to do it above that so that we can make sure we have the right person's turn. So before we switch the turn, we need to check if they won. Before we switch turns, check if the current player won. So yeah, so we can go here and we can see the error. Check winner is not defined. That's because we haven't defined it. So it's a function. Does anyone know how to define a function?
F function, I believe. DEF.
Sorry, what was that?
Oh no, sorry.
Yeah, so const check winner. Yeah, very close. So yeah, you can do it like that. So this is the way we'll do it. So you set it to a value, and then it takes in an argument, and then by saying that there's an arrow, that means you're saying that we basically are defining it as a function, and then whatever is inside the braces is what's going to be executed by this function. Check winner will actually not take any arguments because we have all the data up here. So we can see that all of our game state is on the top. So we actually don't need to worry about passing in anything to the function, which is nice. So now we have to check the winner. So remember we have the winning combos variable right here. this is just an array of all of the possible combos that could be a winner. So if you go back here, for example, 0, 1, 2, that's these indexes. So if someone has these 3 squares in a row, then they're a winner. 3, 4, 5, similarly, 1, 2, 3, these are 3, 4, 5, that's a winner. So this just defines all the possible combos. So what we want to do here is we want to check if the board has one of those combos currently. So does anyone remember how we can do that? Yeah, so to open the React app, just remember you can go to your terminal, and then you want to find your folder. So you do cd to your folder, whatever the name of the folder is, and then you'll want to run npm run start, and that will start the React app, and it'll automatically open in your browser. Yeah, so we do, so we have to loop. So yeah, everyone seems to be getting it pretty much right. So we have to use the if else to check whether we can find the combo on the board, and we have to loop through all the combos to see if any of them are found, right? So we're gonna wanna loop through winning combos. Does anyone know what function we can use to loop through it?
While loop or no? Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that, but JavaScript has a nice native function for arrays that allows us to find something within the array. So you can't use map, because map is actually if you want to set the array to a new value. So here we can see we're mapping over board to set it to a div value, basically, right? We're returning a div at the end, and that's how our value gets displayed on the page. But what we really want to do is we want to find something within the array, right? So there's actually a find function, if you guys remember that from the previous class, previous time we built the tic-tac-toe game. So find is very similar to a map, where you will get the item in the array. So in this case, it's a combo. So this is one combo, and then we can define a function here, right? So now this is where the if else comes in. So if something, right, then we are going to want to return something, right? And else we're going to want to return something, right? So does anyone know what the condition here should be? So we need to put a condition in this if statement. Yeah, so let me make this a little more clear. So const found winning combo equals this, and that is really a Boolean. So this is found winning combo is a Boolean, which is true or false, and then we'll just return that, right? So yeah, so we need to define something here. So yeah, Subodh got it. So if a combo is in one of the winning combinations, right? So we need to find whether this combo, if all of them are equal to the current turn, right? So what we have to do is we'd have to say if so if our board of combo of 0 equals turn, right? So that means is the is this value on the board equal to whoever's turn it is right now? And then we want to do also board of combo 1 equals turn, and board of combo 2 equals turn. So if you remember in JavaScript, the way to do what's it called? To do equals is using 3 equal signs, not 2. That will make sure that they're completely equal. And yeah, so in this case, we've found that the combo exists, right? And it's equal to the current turn, and every single one of those values is the same, right? So what do we want to return here? Does anyone know? Yeah. So we want to return true because we found a combo here, and then obviously otherwise this means we failed to find a winning combo. So then we want to return false. So yeah, let's see if this works. So it looks like it didn't work. So let's try to debug it. So one thing we can do is just see if the actual if we're getting in this value. So we can say found a winner. So now we can open up our console, which is how you would want to debug things. So whatever we console log.log here, it'll show up in our console. So it looks like it did not show up in the console, which means that we did not find a winner, clearly. So we'll just have to remove that so it's not there. So he said, did you save? Yeah, I saved. You need to break out of the game if check
No,
winner
because
is
you
true.
put and over there. It should be ors. It should be or.
No,
Oh,
so
it should be
what we
it
want to
should be
do
and
is,
because you need all of those indexes to be in the combinations.
But I thought combo was the array of arrays which the correct combo would work.
Correct. But all three of those indexes would go in the one array, which would be classified as a winning combo.
Okay.
yeah. So I'll say let's console.log all of the combos to see what they are.
Question: Isn't it combo 0 and then like inside of the same bracket comma 0? Because you're calling from a array inside of an array.
Yeah. So what we want is combo of 0 is, so here combo is actually this array. So for example, it's 0 1 2, right? So then once we do combo of 0, we get 0. Combo of 1 is 1. Combo of 2 is 2. So then it's board of 0, board of 1, board of 2. That's really what we want. But let's see what it's printing out. So first thing it printed out was nothing, right? So we can see our problem right there. It's that we set the board to the clone board, but React hasn't had time to figure out what the new board is, right? So this function actually takes some time to truly update. So it right now it thinks that all of them are empty, right? Even though clearly there's an X here, and that's what it should show on the board. So one option we can do here is just to pass in the clone board, because this has the most recent state. And then we can just use clone board everywhere, and let's see if this works.
All right.
So now we can see that we're getting an X on the first console.log, which is what we want, because that's what the first value in our combo is. So now let's just print out more so we can see you get some X's and O's now. And then cool, so now it works. So the winner's X. So yeah, that's how you can get that. But let's see if there's another way we can do this. So
excuse me, I didn't quite understand exactly why the clone board would enable it to work more than the board would. What is the difference here?
yeah, so let's go over what the use state does. So use state. So here's an interesting way of looking at it. So it returns a pair of values, the current state, and a function that updates it. So we can see here, board, it returns the state and the function that allows you to update the board, which is set board, right? But update state, I'm trying to find where it says that it's set state takes time, right? That's the simplest way of looking at it. It's because set state React book. Yeah. So this is a good guide. So this set state and use state do not make changes directly to the state object, right? So they create queues for React core to update the state object of a React component. So this does not happen immediately. So let me comment that down here. Does not update the board immediately. So it adds this to the queue, and it actually it performs this action on the next state update, right? So it actually won't perform this action right within this function. It'll do it the next time we render our board again. So that's why it's taking time to do it. So the best way to actually do this is check for, basically we can use the use effect hook. So use effect is after a state has changed, it will allow you to do a function, and then you can do whatever you want in that function. I won't go into that because I don't want to overcomplicate things, but that's the best way to actually to check for the changed board. But for now, I think it makes the most sense to pass in our clone board, because like I said, this does not update the board immediately. So we to get the most up-to-date board, we wanna pass in the clone board. So to have the most up-to-date board, pass in cloned board, because board won't be updated until the next render of our page. But yeah, so that's how you do that. And yeah, it's a tricky bug, so don't worry too much about that. It's more important that you understand that it does not update it immediately, and we have to find a workaround here. Do we have any more questions?
Could you scroll up just to the if else statement over there? Thanks.
Cool. Do we have any questions? So, I mean, just to recap, we can see that this code is definitely simpler than what we had with the HTML only code. So that's really the whole point of using React. And let me pull up the JavaScript code from that. So here's what it looked like previously. We had to define a listener function, and this used pure JavaScript, which is a little more complicated. And I know a lot of you were confused by the event, e.target.dataset. We had to use we had to also use the document.query selector and set the inner HTML manually.
But
we had
then
to
again, doesn't
define
that
every yeah.
Isn't that e.target? Doesn't that define like an event that will take place through manual, like basically manual use?
See, that's a bad.
Yeah. So what e.target defines is what element the event was performed on. So if you have a HTML element that's clicked or hovered over or anything like that,
Or
you'll
key
get
pressed.
E. Yeah, or key press, anything really. So like anything that happens on an HTML element, you'll have an event for it. And if you add the event listener for that event, so in this case it's click because we want to know when the board is clicked, then you'll get the e.target and then you can do whatever you want with it. But that's how you do it in pure JavaScript. And like comparing that back here, we can see like on click is way easier, right? We don't need to do any e or e.target or add event listener. It's very simple. It's just on click, call this function, right? So that's like one thing that makes it way easier. Another thing is the fact that we don't have to write it out like this. This is a pain writing it out, like with the plus signs and the quotations and manually setting the query selector's inner HTML, this target, and that in React you can basically do it in 3 lines. So we can see these this entire like 10 lines right here got converted into 3 lines right here, which is obviously way nicer and cleaner. So that's a huge advantage of React also. And yeah, I mean, another thing is the fact that we can automatically update our page just like this. So I can just say hello, and it updates it right there. So without me having to do anything. Whereas in HTML, you'll have to refresh the page, and sometimes it's just a pain when you're developing. Yeah, so overall React is usually going to be better for more complex apps. So tic-tac-toe, it wasn't a whole lot better, but you can easily see the nice improvements in just the code structure and the syntax. You don't have to use any of the pure JavaScript and HTML like add event listener. That's really annoying and can be tough to work with. So React overall will make it easier. It's harder to see in this app because it is just a tic-tac-toe app. It's not like we're building an entire website with 1,000 or more users, but it's still very it's still a huge improvement on the developer experience, which is the main reason you'd want to use React. Cool. So that's that for our tic-tac-toe game. I have some extra stuff that we can do using a we can try to build new things for the rest of this class and next class, which I think is our last class. But was there anything that you guys were curious about or wanted to learn about web development and JavaScript in general? Yeah, I'll scroll down. Okay, so one of the questions is, why do we do 3 equal signs? So in JavaScript, you need to use 3 equal signs instead of 2 in order to compare whether 2 values are equal. 2 will not do the complete comparison, and it'll sometimes be equal when it shouldn't be. But I'll post a link about this in the TinyURL. Cool. So yeah, one of the questions was about events, and
And callback
callbacks.
functions.
Yeah. So we use to call certain functions while the event is true. What exactly do you mean by that part? Where we use to call certain functions while the event is true?
So like certain callback functions, can we apply them in JavaScript, like the mouse click methods or the key press methods? So like those callback functions, while the event is true, then it'll call a certain function which we've already defined.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so let's look up like React event functions, right? So handling events in React, right? So let me see if I can find a good. So like this is the on-click stuff that we've already learned, but let me see if I can find a list of all the React events. Yeah, so they don't have a good example, but I mean, yeah, so like in general, the ones you want to use are on click and on change. I'll see if they have like the on key press in this, like on key press React. I mean, there's basically like it depends on the element that you're using, right? So let's actually do an example. So let's say we want to create a page with our name, right? So yeah, so let me remove this for now. I'll comment out this return statement. And the next thing we want to do is return our name, right? So we'll have a div, and then we'll have a h1 tag, and then your name is name, right? And to do that, we'll have to use state again. So as you guys know, we can easily use state and set our name, right, to something. So right now it's set to nothing, right? So your name is nothing. So this is, for example, you can use this when you're creating a website and you want someone to create a profile or something, right? So you need to let them set their name and email and everything like that, right? So in this case, we'll just do name. So and then we want them to be able to set it. So we'll say so what's the best way to do this? So we can say and which is what you can use to say only if the name is there, then do you want to print something out, right? And then similarly, we'll do not name, and then please enter your name below. So now it'll add that in. So let's make this a little smaller because it's really big. Cool. So just to explain this again, sorry, I'll do the events right after this, but just to explain this, basically, and tells the React to only show what's after the and if the first thing is true. So let me comment that here. Only show h3 if first condition is true. So if name is not there, so if not name, then it'll say please enter your name. If name is there, then it'll say your name is this, right? And what we can do here is actually just have an input that has some events. So input right here, and then let's just see what that prints out. So we just have a nice little box here. So that's the HTML input element, which is really useful when you're creating a website. And then we will want to do on key press, right? So let's see what happens in on key press. So this is an event, and we can say on press. I just won't call it the same thing, but it's the same idea. And then we can pass in the function here, right? So now we have this function, and it will take in the still event here because it's a key press event. And let's just see what the value of the element is, right? So we can console.log it here, and then so we can see that it's printing it out nicely for us, right? So that's on key press. But if you notice, the first time it printed it out, it actually printed out as an empty, right? Empty string. That's because on key press happens before, or it happens while you're pressing it, right? So this is before you actually have a chance to see what the value is. So if we use a on change instead, then we can see as soon as we did it, we got the value. So in general, you're going to want to use on change. So that's that. And then I'll just say set name e.target.value. And so now if I type my name, now we can see that it printed out my name here. And React is so nice because it updates it automatically, just like that. So as I type it, it's updating it. And you can see that was what, like 10 lines of code, and I was able to make this pretty nice experience right here. So that's kind of how you would want to use events. So I'll just say value equals e.target.value. So that's how you know what the new name is. But yeah, so we can go over all this code again really quick. So cool. So as I explained before, function app is what we use to kind of tell React what we want to return in our function. So just by removing this one return statement, the page will not display anything. Oh yeah, so it even said that nothing was returned, but we can just return null, for example, and that will return, it will do nothing. And then we can define functions. So first we define state. So in a tic-tac-toe game, you need a state of a board and you need the turn. Yeah, so the basis of animated scrolling, yeah, we can go over that next class. So we have a board and we have our turn, right? So we can have an array for the board, and we can also have whose turn it is, so X or O, right? And the board will be all the squares on our page here. So the most important thing is that we can map over a board using the JavaScript map function. I explained this last class, but we map it over, and then we're able to display a square for every board. And in each square, we give the value in our array, but we can also have the onClick function, which handles the click, and then basically does whatever is in the handle click function every time that's clicked. So every time this is clicked, we can see it actually switches it, which is something we can change if we really want to make a real tic-tac-toe game. But it will do the event every time you click it. So that's why it's in the onClick function. It's that we'll always execute this function no matter what. And then so you have the I explained this at the start of class, where you clone the board, and then once you have your clone board, you can set the index with the new turn. So whoever's turn it was, and it starts out as X, then you set it to X, and then you want to update the board, because that's how you that's the set variable function that you get from useState for free. And now we can set the board, and then you want to check for the winner. So after you set the board, you want to pass in the clone board, because like we said, the React does not update the board immediately. So then when you check for the winner, we'll call a function here. So we'll go check for winner, and then it'll really just go over the winning combos. So you go find in the winning combos, find the combo that has the current turns value in every square. So that means in 3 in a row, we have an X or no, right? And if you find that, return true. Otherwise, we failed to find a winning combo, so return false, and then we'll return whatever the result of this is. So that if there is a winner, that means we return true. Then we'll tell the user that there's a winner, and then otherwise we'll otherwise we won't alert anything. And then at the end, we'll always change the turn to the next person, because we want to make sure that we go to the next turn. So yeah, that's like
could
the
you
overall.
Scroll down to the on? Could you just like keep it at the on-click area just for a second? The on-click right there.
Yeah.
So is it basically saying, when you're defining handle click, so it's basically saying that based on the index where you click, or based on the specific square, Then what is the code? Where's the code that says we will want to have the proper letter, either X or open in that square?
Yeah, so that's right here. So set the index to the current turn, right?
Oh, so
So
clone board index equals turn, meaning we'll set the index to, okay, I got it.
yeah,
So
so
it'll basically
that's why
reset the
it's,
turn to the index.
yeah, exactly. So whatever index we passed in, so let me do that again. I think I might have done this, but console.log index. So now we can see our index every time it's clicked, right? So if I click here, that's index 4 because 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I click here, index 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And basically every time something is clicked, we have the index of that square, and that's what allows us to edit the value in the board.
I got it.
So let me just add something really quick. If board of index is not equal to this, then return. So that will basically prevent the problem of overriding it. So this what this is going to check is, do we already have a value in this index, right? Then we want to ignore the user clicking it, and we'll just return automatically, and nothing else here will be executed. So return end this function, right? So now when I click it again, so I'm clicking right here, but it's not changing it, and that's good because yeah, we don't want to change anything. Yeah, so find will always loop through every element in the array, and then we'll be searching for something to be true. So once it finds it's true, it'll actually exit because we already found one. Where does the HTML come from? Do you just mean this? So a div is the core block in HTML. This is just how you define content. So it's important to remember that you can't just put things by themselves in React. React basically requires that you return one div and only one div. So you have to wrap everything in a div. Otherwise, it sees multiple elements and it might get confused. So that's why we wrap that in a div, and then you can basically write any HTML as we learned earlier in this class. And here, what we want to do, the most important thing is have and it's important to remember that when you have braces within HTML, that's actually JavaScript, and that's a great part of React. It allows you to write JavaScript within HTML. So this is all JavaScript here, anything within the braces. So yeah, this is actually just how you return a bunch of squares. So this is the HTML part that we will return from the JavaScript. So the JavaScript, what it does is it goes over its data, and then it returns HTML so that we can render it on the page. Yeah, so how can you tell which keywords are natively built into JavaScript and which ones are imported from React? So you really can't know unless it just comes from practice, but really the only one you have to remember for React is class name. Class name is React specific to React, and class is the JavaScript. So if I put class here instead of class name, then we'll see invalid DOM property class. Did you mean class name, right? So our browser already knows that you should have used class name because it's running through React, and React will actually throw this error to it, telling it that it's that it messed up. So that's why you have to remember to use class name. Cool. We're a little over time, but feel free to post any questions you guys have in Slack if you guys want to do anything next class. Otherwise, I'll think of something for our last class to do.